Man, I have to drink this water, sip this water. After last week, the number that show did on my voice, oh my gosh. Y'all do not know what happened to my voice. So after we finished the podcast last week, my voice completely, you could hear it as the podcast went on. And if you just watch the separate clips, if you watch them in sequence, which I have them in a playlist if you want to go check that out, if you look at it and you listen to how I sound, my voice, you could tell each episode my voice just got worse and worse and worse. And then by the time I got to Tuesday night, I went to a meeting for Clemson that we had to go to that was required. And all of a sudden, like, I tried to speak because I didn't have to speak, like, after the podcast. I went straight and worked out and just kept it silent, just did my thing in the gym, came back, and then went to the meeting. And then when I tried to, like, raise my voice because they asked me a question, my voice just was gone. My voice started squeaking. It was horrible. It's actually kind of hilarious, but it wasn't funny on Wednesday because, like, the day after, it was completely gone to the point where I couldn't speak at all. And so I got so angry. Just in my head, I was like, I can't speak. I can't say what I want to say. Like, I can't, like, people would be saying stuff to me and saying, like, how, like, they were making fun of me and how my voice sounded. And I just wanted to say something, but I couldn't say it. It was the worst. But we're back. We're back with the voice working, except I still have sort of a cough, so I'm going to be drinking water throughout. So just bear with me, audience, and Hasan.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's get it started. All right. So welcome to the Keep It Real podcast. This is your host, John West, a.k.a. Deadop, and I'm with co-host Hasan Bridges. Say hello to the people.
What's up, y'all?
All right. So we're just going to get right straight on into it from this point on. All right. So you ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, so with this, the format, usually I have questions. I have a list of questions that I like to write down and ask, and just bring up as topics. But for this, I'm kind of changing the format, switching it up a little bit because I have more takeaways than I have questions about these games. So that's how we're going to run it today. So last night, we watched the game. It was a Monday Night Football game, an exciting game between the 49ers and the Seahawks. We knew it was going to be exciting as 49ers were 8-0 coming into the game. Seahawks were 7-2, and the Seahawks walk away victorious. They walk away with a 27-24 overtime win on a game-winning field goal led by Russell Wilson on the drive. And the Seahawks, they move on to 8-2, and the 49ers, they take their first L of the season. And I have several takeaways from this game, but we'll just go, one by one and talk about each one of them and develop the topic. But my first takeaway is that obviously both of these teams are very good. Don't get it twisted. Don't let the turnovers. Each team had over 3 turnovers. I believe the Seahawks had about 3 and the 49ers had about 4. And that I don't know if that includes overtime. When you look at the ESPN stat sheet, they sometimes, I believe the yardage is off when you look at it. Because when you look at the passing yards, it's not the same as when you look at the team stats. But you look at it, both the 49ers and the Seahawks, both of them have tremendous defenses, at least with how they played last night. We know what the 49ers were made of on defense with their D-line led by the rookie Bosa, who had another monster night. And then on top of that, the Seahawks, they finally came around and played some really good defense. And so I think that's what caused all these turnovers. But the 49ers, I think it proved a lot in that game for what the 49ers are, and that is that they're a limited football team when it comes down to it. very good at, I'm not going to say they're not good. Obviously, they're very good, but they're limited. They have to be able to run the football and be ahead in the game if they want to win. I think that played itself out in the game because when you look at the stats in the first four quarters, the 49ers, for one of the first times this season, and maybe the first time all season, I would have to check, but they were outrushed 147 to 87 by the Seahawks, which is mind blowing because of how the 49ers like to play offense. They like to play a ball control style offense with Tevin Coleman and their backs with Matt Burita, I think is how you say it. Is that how you say it, Hassan?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Matt Burita. They like to control the football. They like to run it down your throat and play action off of that with Jimmy Garoppolo. And so the fact that they weren't able to run the ball, I think it proves that if you stop their running attack, kind of like with how we were talking about Dallas last week, and we'll talk about later today, uh, if you stop their running game, it's going to make it difficult for them to win. I think that played itself out. What are your thoughts on that?
I basically have the same thoughts as you. The Seahawks did a good job of slowing down their run game, which counters their pass game, because a lot of their pass game comes off of play action and pass fake. I mean, and run fake. But then the Seahawks did a great job too. Russell Wilson, even though he didn't play spectacular passing wise, he managed the game. Chris Carson played good, and Russ was out there doing this thing too. But yeah, that defense, I guess, it kind of gave you a little hint of a blueprint how to beat the 49ers. I mean, the 49ers did get pressure. They had 5 sacks, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
so it wasn't like it was a dominating game or anything like that, but I guess it showed you a blueprint on how to make Jimmy Garoppolo. Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't really know, but yeah, I guess they showed like a blueprint. We'll
and
have to
yeah,
see.
all it takes is really once with some of these teams. I mean, we see it every year with a team that starts out dominantly. They're on a roll, and then a team will just snap. They'll just find a way to stop them, and then all of a sudden you see all these defensive coordinators. They'll try and emulate what happened. A good example of that is what happened to the Rams last year. I was just watching a video about it. This just a few hours ago, actually, where they were talking about how the reasons why the Rams lost to the Patriots, and the reason why was because the Chicago Bears earlier in the regular season had set the blueprint. They had, stopped the Rams for the first time from scoring 30 plus points, and they just completely dominated that game. And then New England was able to take that game plan and put it into their system and bring that to the Super Bowl, because when you look at it, most of the time they were playing man last year for the Patriots, and then they changed to zone for that game, and it completely stifled uh, what the Rams wanted to do. And so now you see it with the 49ers. They said, you know what, we're just not going to allow you to run. We're going to stop your running game, and then when you try and pass it, we're going to put you in third and long, and we're going to send the house after you. We're going to send crazy pressures and get to your quarterback. And that's exactly what happened, because Jimmy Garoppolo was sacked a good amount too. I mean, the 49ers got a lot of sacks, but so did the Seahawks defense, as Clowney just came up huge last night.
Yep.
He was all over the field in the run and in the passing game. When you look at it, actually, Jimmy Garoppolo was sacked the exact same amount of times at 5 times.
Yep.
So when you look at that, that completely has, I think, given the blueprint on how to beat the 49ers. Now, we'll see how the 49ers start to adjust to it. And also, you do have to take into account that Emmanuel Sanders had gotten hurt in the middle of the game. Up to that point, he had played really well during the Seahawks game when they went up 10-0. And also, George Kittle was out too. He was out the entire game. with an injury. And so George Kittle is a huge part of what the 49ers want to do. And so when you take away him as a passing target, Jimmy Garoppolo, and we'll get into it, I think we could get into it right now. Jimmy Garoppolo is a good quarterback. He's a, you could win with Jimmy Garoppolo, but he is not an elite quarterback in any sort of imagination, because when you look at how he played last night, going 24-46 for 248 yards, a touchdown, interception, 5.4 yards per attempt, that's abysmal, especially when you look at his QBR, it's 18.9. And so I think that taking away George Kittle and taking away Emmanuel Sanders and that running game, all those paired together, taking it away from him, you look at the film and you just see him when he's getting pressured by Clowney, by Ziggy Ansah, and all those cats that they got over at the Seahawks, it completely rattled him. He looked completely uncomposed in the pocket. He just looked rattled. He was making mistakes. He was looking like he wanted to turn the ball over. As you could see with the multiple turnovers that the 49ers had, that was the case. And so Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't know if he can lead the 49ers where they ultimately want to go unless they have all the supporting pieces around him. He's not a guy who's going to individually take you over the top. What are your thoughts on that, Hasan?
I agree. Uh, I compare it to, I put him in the same class as Dak Prescott. He's a good quarterback, but he's not that he's not that guy. He's not the guy that's gonna take you home. That's why I never bought into the hype. What when he played for the Patriots, he was only 5-0, 6-0, and people were just like, oh, he's
Less
so
than
good.
that.
He's
Less than that. He only played the first because Tom Brady was suspended 4 games, and then he got injured midway through that. So I think he only played about 3 games that year. He went 3-0, I'm pretty sure. But
oh, okay.
yeah, it was not that big of a sample size. Now, he did go to the 49ers for the latter half of the year and then go like 6-0 and take a terrible 49ers team to like a 6-10 record. Which I mean that proved a lot too, and again I don't think he's a bad quarterback. We're not saying he's trash, but he's just not that dude who's going to be that superstar level quarterback like some people made him out to be.
Yeah, like the 49ers, their organization made him out to be. They gave him a whole bunch of a boatload of cash. And I mean, whether he's worth it or not, we'll have to see. Because they still have a good team, but I don't know. I just don't think he's that guy that's going to take you to the Super Bowl, which is every team's goal to win a Super Bowl. But I'm not really sold on him. I'm still not sold on him. I don't think I ever will be. I just don't think his like the way he plays, he seems scared at times. As you seen last night, his two best targets were out, and he was lost. Like he was looking like Baker Mayfield. Like he was lost. Like it was. I was like, oh my
that
god.
that's true. I mean, he did look lost. And listen, this is a roster that can win the Super Bowl. So when you talk about it, the 49ers are legit. The 49ers can win the Super Bowl. And so it just is going to come down to, can Jimmy Garoppolo produce in big moments? And we'll see. I mean, I don't think he's completely incapable of doing it, just like with Dak. I think both quarterbacks are completely capable of winning big games and winning a lot of games for your franchise. But is he worth all that money? We'll see. I think he can prove that he is. But I think with every quarterback, you do have to overpay him if you want to keep him with the amount of money that's being thrown at the Kirk Cousins of the world and at the Jared Goffs and what Dak is probably going to get. I mean, it's just the standard. It's the standard. And so if you want to keep these quarterbacks who you think can be your franchise quarterback, even if they're not as great as some other quarterbacks in the league, you have to pay them that big or they're going to leave. I mean,
Yeah, true.
yeah.
I
So,
yeah, I agree with that. But
and then
yeah.
my final takeaway from last night, and we could spend some time talking about this. I think Lamar Jackson took the lead for the MVP last night. Now it's very close. It's a very close race. It's probably the closest race that I've probably witnessed in my years of watching the NFL, which is probably about, it's not too long. It's 3 to 4 years. I've been watching college football longer than I've been watching the NFL. So I'm not the most educated guy on the NFL. But when I look at it, this is the closest race it's been in the past 4 or 5 years that I can remember. And because you got, I think, legitimately five different guys who could win this race. But I do think at the lead is Lamar Jackson right now, and he just took the lead over what was, I think, Russell Wilson's award up to this point. You look at Lamar Jackson, he's completely revolutionary, if I could speak, revolutionizing the way that owners and GMs are looking at quarterbacks these days. I mean, when you looked at it before with modern day QBs that run the ball and maybe not be the most developed quarterback when it comes to passing the ball, people just would completely, you know, just completely ignore them because they wouldn't be willing to put a system around them, and they were like, oh, well, we can't, get him to throw the ball, so we're just going to pass on him. Bump that. The Ravens are proving with Greg Roman, their offensive coordinator, who is the offensive coordinator when Colin Kaepernick was in the 49ers system. He's proving that he could turn Lamar Jackson into a star. I mean, Lamar Jackson always had all this talent, and the fact that they were able to buy into him, it's an amazing sight to see. When you look at his stats, he's completing about 66% of his passes, 2,036 yards, 8.0 yards per attempt, 15 touchdowns, 5 picks, a 76.2 QBR, which ranks 4th in the league. Just looking at those passing stats, that's pretty amazing. He's on pace to throw for over 3,500 yards by the end of the season and over 25 touchdowns and only throwing a minimal amount of picks. I think he's projected to throw about 9 picks, which is great numbers for passing. But on top of that, you look at his rushing stats: 106 carries, 702 yards with 6 touchdowns. He's on pace to run for over 1,200 yards. Bro, that's almost what, 6,000? Or 5,000. That's almost 5,000 total yards of total offense when it comes to his projected stats, which I think is just phenomenal. He's revolutionizing the way teams look at the modern day QBs, because now people are going to start looking for who's the best player in the draft. Because when he was looked at as a quarterback and you looked at the other quarterbacks in his draft, he was taken last in the first round because people were looking at his passing stats and looking at his ability to throw the football. And everybody said all these other quarterbacks were better at throwing the football. But when you look at who was just the pure better athlete, the better player at the position, it was Lamar Jackson. Clearly. Yeah. I mean, and so people were blinded by that, and so I think he's definitely going to revolutionize the way that GMs look at the draft, because GMs are going to start to think, maybe I should just take the best available option at quarterback, no matter who it is. Because I think people overthought it, not only with Lamar Jackson, but with Deshaun Watson. When Deshaun Watson went into the draft, people started to criticize and overlook his interceptions. They would look at all of his interceptions and say, oh, he's a turnover machine. But when you look at Mitchell Trubisky, he does this and this, which I think was completely just out of line and just completely wrong thinking. And it's been proven, because Deshaun Watson, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL now, and you look at Mitchell Trubisky, he's probably going to get moved on from in Chicago. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. When you looked at Baker Mayfield and you looked at Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen and Josh Allen, they all had better completion percentage and less interceptions, and so people said, oh, well, we should take this guy because he's a better passer, when really Lamar Jackson was undisputed the best player in college football in 2017. I don't care if he didn't win the Heisman. He was the best player. And so now I think that GMs are just going to start to look at who can we get, who is the best player at the quarterback position instead of who is the best thrower or who has the best mechanics. What are your thoughts on the MVP race right now?
I really agree. I believe that is Lamar's award to lose because look at his next three games. Some pretty good teams that if he beat these three teams, he's pretty much a lock, in my opinion. He has the Texans, the Rams, and the 49ers. If he could win two of those games, even if he win all three, then he's pretty much a lock. The way he's playing, I like how you brought up Deshaun Watson. We need to give him some credit here, because him and Lamar at the same time, they're showing that you shouldn't even just like, I don't know, like the way the GMs have been in their little draft mode of finding size and stature, and I don't know, but like you should take the best player. I like how they're shattering that mold of black QBs that they can't throw and they can
For
just
sure.
run. I love that. We should probably give Kyler Murray some credit too. He's playing good.
Oh,
Although
but
he
he's not
plays
in the
for the
MVP
Bears.
race. That's why I didn't
No,
mention him. But yeah, he's definitely part of the mold breaking that's going on for sure.
yeah, sure. But yeah, Lamar Jackson playing incredible. I believe he's the MVP. Like I said, Russell Wilson doesn't have too many quality games left. I mean, he got the 49ers last game of the season, but by that time they'll be resting. So I mean, I don't know. It's I feel like it's Lamar's award to lose unless something spectacular happens. I don't believe Christian McCaffrey is going to win it because it's really driven for a QB like that. That's we're just gonna say it how
Of course, it's
it is.
it's the same thing with the Heisman in college football. They're gonna look at a
It's
quarterback
driven
before
for
they look at a running back or a defensive player. It's just the facts. It's just the facts.
yeah, just facts. Um, yeah, that's pretty much my takeaway. Lamar Jackson's playing out of his mind. I told John West this a few years ago. I was like, "Yo, he's gonna be the best QB," and he ain't
You
won
you
to.
ne- you never
Yeah, no,
said
no, no,
that.
no,
Stop
no,
lying
no,
because I told you
no.
that. See, he's trying to front. I
Um,
said that when he was at Louisville and he played against Texas A&M in the bowl game in 2015-2016 season. I told him going into that year, watch out for Louisville, and sure enough, he doubted him, and then guess what? He's ran it up all the way up on FSU. So but
oh
we won't
God,
get
you
into
ain't
that.
have to bring up that. We ain't have Durham. Sure.
Okay, and he it wouldn't have made a difference. It was 63-20, really 63-10. They scored the last 10 points in garbage time. So we'll just get into that, and then to finish off the topic, just to give you another stat for the audience. Lamar Jackson has also finished with 2 games this year of having a perfect QB rating. Perfect.
Yeah,
That I
that's crazy.
mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. But those were my takeaways from the Monday Night Football game. So if you like this video, hit the like button, and if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, and also click the notification bell so you never miss an upload or a stream. Okay, so we're gonna start to move on to the Vikings and the Cowboys. It seems like we always gotta talk about the Cowboys, but they're one of the most relevant teams, so it's just that way. We gotta talk about the Cowboys. Uh, so they lost to the Vikings 28-24, and when you look at how Dak Prescott played, 28 of 46, 397 yards, 8.6 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Really shouldn't even count the pick. It was on a Hail Mary. He's just chucking the ball up, trying to give his guys an opportunity to go catch the ball. And Kirk Cousins came up pretty big. Had 23 of 32, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. Pretty good QBR. And my main takeaways from this game is because we've talked about the Cowboys before, and you could say, I came out with a video saying that they had found the winning formula last week, and I still don't think that position was wrong because they did find the winning formula. They just weren't able to emulate that winning formula in this game because they got outrushed. I still think that they have to run the football to win the game. But that being said, my takeaways is they need to pay Dak now. And they need to
Oh,
pay him in full, and they need to fire Jason Garrett. because
Oh Lord.
I don't know. No, what what happened at the end of the game? Did you watch the game? Because I did, and when I watched the game, I saw a completely fine quarterback, a quarterback that can win you football games and can go out and maybe even win you a championship if you have the right pieces around him. That's what I saw because when you look at how the game was going, Dak was having to win the football game for them because Ezekiel Elliott got shut down. As a team, the Cowboys rushed for only 50 yards. 50. Now, that also brings up the stat that they haven't won a game that Zeke hasn't gone off in, which you could blame that on Dak. And I think part of the blame goes on Dak. But for this game, when you look at this singular game, the blame doesn't go to Dak. All right, Dak came out and performed. As he was driving down the field, excuse me, later in the game, he was hitting darts after darts after darts. And then all of a sudden, what happened? What was the reason that the Cowboys lost and they weren't able to punch it in when they got inside the red zone to go up 31-28 potentially? Can you tell me what happened?
They handed the ball off to Zeke.
Yes. They tried to give the ball to Zeke 3 times, two on handoffs on second and third down, and then on fourth down, they tried to throw the ball to him when he was being covered by one of the best coverage linebackers in the league, which is Eric Kendricks. What is that? You can't tell me that that isn't Jason Garrett. You can't tell me that he didn't make that executive decision to run the football to try and kill the clock. You can't tell me that because Kellen Moore was throwing the ball all over the field. As an offensive coordinator, I don't want to make it sound like he was a quarterback. Obviously, Dak was the quarterback, but he was the one calling the plays. He was getting the ball out to Amari Cooper. He was getting the ball out to Randall Cobb all game. He was coming up with these brilliant passing concepts that were getting these wide receivers open, and then all of a sudden, they just decide to run the football. You telling me that's Kellen Moore when all game long he had showed you that he wanted to throw the football? No, that's Jason Garrett. And that is what is holding this team back. I mean, you could look at the defense and say that, oh, the defense didn't play well, which is true. The defense didn't play well. They're definitely underachieving for their talent level with the Wolf Hunter. He looks lost to me. Jalen Smith is super inconsistent, and so is DeMarcus Lawrence with that pass rush along with Robert Quinn. But I think you have to put it on Jason Garrett because I think they would have won that football game if they had just left the ball in Dak's hands and they had kept on throwing the football. And I know you got to be worried about your defense and say, oh, we don't want to leave a bunch of time left on the clock so that Kirk Cousins might be able to drive down the field and maybe get a game-tying field goal or even a game-winning touchdown. But at the same time, you have to play to win, man. You're not up yet. So you have to be able to say, we just got to score no matter what. I don't care how much time. We still got talent on our defense. They should have just went in and punched it in. Your thoughts?
My thoughts. Um, Dak Prescott, Dak Prescott, Dak Prescott.
You can't blame Dak Prescott,
I'm
bro.
not. I'm not gonna blame him. I'm not gonna blame him. He played good. He played good. I mean, but it just goes to show you. I'm gonna bring up the point every time they lose. Every time they lose, it's because Ezekiel Elliott's not having a good game. This date back since he was what, a rookie. No, since that year that Zeke was not there.
But in this situation, they could have gotten their first win if they had just left the ball in Dak's hands.
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
When you go, you got probably the best back in the game. What you need, 6 yards, 7 yards. I would have did the same thing. Although I do believe he should have opened up with the pass just to keep the defense on their heels. You have Ezekiel Elliott. Although your run game was working,
what are we talking about, man?
Talking about Ezekiel Elliott.
Okay, and as we could see, if you watch the film, if you watch the tape, Ezekiel Elliott is not the same running back that he was. I don't know if he's still in that Cabo shape, man. He's not. He's not. Bro, you can't tell me that you see the same burst that you saw from Ezekiel Elliott earlier in his career. You can't tell me that. You can't tell me that.
Crazy.
And Dak, why would you take the ball out of the hot hand, man? Just forget the quarterback. Forget who it is. Just leave it as if the quarterback was a blank name. All right. He's throwing darts all across the field to get you in position to score. Why would you take it out of the hot hand?
Man, I don't care if it was Peyton Manning. If I got Ezekiel Elliott back there, I don't care if he spent 5 years off of football. That may, bro, I don't know. It's just like,
You saw what happened when they handed it off. Loss. I mean, it's not all Ezekiel. I don't want to say it's Ezekiel Elliott's fault. It's not all his fault. Obviously, the blocking was not up to par, and also part of the reason was the Vikings did dedicate their defense to stopping their running game. Let's not act like they were in a base defense and they were just getting beat. They weren't. They built that defense in that game to say you're not going to run the football against us, and we're going to be able to run the football against you. That was the game plan because it was the Vikings outrushed the Cowboys 153-50 with Dalvin Cook. You gotta give Dalvin Cook credit, but it's not all Ezekiel Elliott's fault, to stay on point. But I mean, Dak, you look at Dak, he's putting you in positions to win football games. And so again, with like we talked about in the last topic, with the trend of how you have to pay quarterbacks, he deserves to be paid right now. He deserves to
all
be
right.
paid.
So was Dak Prescott putting them in situations to win against the Saints or against the Packers?
No, well, no,
What
not
about the
against
Jets?
not against the Saints. No, he did not, and I don't even think you could say against the Packers. Now he did play better against the Packers. He was eventually able to break through and start scoring, but no, he did not. All right, I'm not gonna say that he's been playing a perfect season, but he is still a quarterback that can win you football games, and that was shown against the Vikings. And the Vikings have a great defense. All right. So you have to pay him. And you cannot tell me that he is what's holding back the team. Are you really going to sit here and say that Jason Garrett is completely fine and they should keep him as the head coach and that Dak's the problem?
No. I do believe Jason Garrett shouldn't be fired, but I still believe Dak Prescott is not the guy that's going to give you a championship. I just don't believe it. Like, I'm sorry. I mean, I do agree you should pay him now, or else you're going to be overpaying by 100 million. Because I just don't know. I
Well,
just don't think
he's going to get paid that. They're going to have to pay him over 40 million cuz he's got games like this to show for it. He's going to, there are conflicting arguments that the Cowboys trying to use, and they're conflicting with each other, and the arguments don't necessarily make sense because on one hand they're saying, "Oh, Dak's our QB, we want him here. He can win us football games." But then on the other hand, they want to say, "Oh, we want you to take a discount because Ezekiel Elliott's the leader of the team, and you're not the leader of the team." Well, that completely contradicts yourself.
wait,
What are we saying?
is this Dak's last year on his contract, or like can they franchise tag him?
Oh, they could franchise tag him, but I'm pretty sure that he goes into free agency next year.
So after next season.
I believe after this season. I could be wrong, but I think that it's either after this season or next season. But they have to get him paid.
Bro, if they don't win with this season or next season, bro, they're not paying them at all. If they don't win this season, they're gonna franchise tag them or do whatever they can do to not sign them to a long term deal. And then if they don't win the season after, bro, it's just over. That dude's gone. He's gone. They're not gonna.
Well, that would
I just
be.
don't see.
I think that would be one of the worst mistakes the Cowboys make, because you cannot find quarterbacks that easily. I mean, we see it all the time. We see that people have. There's probably about one or two quarterbacks that come out of every draft. And if that. I mean, some quarterbacks don't even have any elite quarterbacks that come out of it. It's because
Yeah.
even when we thought that the 2017 NFL draft or 2018, depending on how you look at it, after the 17-18 season, we'll say it like that, the NFL draft class with Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, and all those cats. We thought that that was going to be a super stacked draft class and that all the QBs were going to be stars and it was going to be easy to find a quarterback. And guess what? Really, only one quarterback's having success out of that, and that's Lamar Jackson, the last one that was taken. Baker Mayfield's struggling now. I mean, he had success in his rookie year, but he's struggling now. Sam Darnold has been completely inconsistent and out because of mono. Josh Rosen has fallen off the face of the planet because he got traded to the Miami Dolphins and they're trying to tank. So he's not even with his original team, which was the Arizona Cardinals, who passed him up for Kyler Murray, which looks like that was a good move. And then Josh Allen, he looks like just a running quarterback. He doesn't look like he can throw for a lick. So you really can only find about one or two quarterbacks in every draft class, and then you're not going to find many quarterbacks out there in free agency. So I believe they need to pay Dak now, because if you let Dak leave and you let him walk, you're not going to be able to find another quarterback who can win you football games at the rate that Dak Prescott does, which he does. You can't take that away from him. He has won the second most games to Tom Brady
Thanks
in
to
the
Ezekiel
NFL.
Elliott. Thanks to Ezekiel Elliott.
So you want to put money on it that if they lose Dak Prescott after this season, which I don't think will happen, I do think they will pay him. But if they don't, and he walks,
I'll,
you're saying that theoretically, by your thought process, the Cowboys should have the exact same success? Is that what you're
I'll
saying?
put it like this: if they lose Dak, they will do better than if they lose Zeke. I'll put it like that because if they was to lose Zeke, they would be terrible. If they was to lose Dak, they wouldn't be terrible. They'll be an average team. That I'll put it like that. He's not, bro. He's not that much of a difference maker. If you have a top five wide receiver, a great O line, and a top five back, and a good defense, I can get Sam Darnold to go out there and do what Dak Prescott's doing. He's not that good. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I think that the Vikings game showed the complete opposite of that. Ezekiel Elliott did not show up. The offensive line did not show up. The wide receivers showed up, obviously, because somebody had to catch the ball. And I think Dak Prescott was producing. I think we got robbed of an opportunity by Jason Garrett to see Dak Prescott go out and win a football game for once without having Zeke's help. I think he was in position to do that. I think it was taken away from him by Jason Garrett. That's just my thoughts. That's just what I believe. I'm not saying that he's a star quarterback, but I believe he deserves to be paid handsomely because of the way that the standard that you have to pay quarterbacks by. And I think he can win you a lot of football games and maybe even a championship. But we're going to move on. So if you like this video, hit the like button. And also, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And also, click the notification bell so you never miss an upload or a stream. All right, so I got to get my thoughts out as a Panthers fan out on the Packers and the Panthers game. You can laugh all you want. You know what happened to the Saints this past week, right? What happened to them
Super
Sunday?
Bowl hopes. We got Super Bowl hopes though.
Maybe
Y'all
not for
don't.
long.
Y'all
Just saying. Maybe not for long because Atlanta, they bust y'all. I mean, they were pressuring y'all like crazy. Grady Jarrett and Vic Beasley, them Clemson cats were getting on it.
We asked Cam.
Ask Cam. Well, Cam would have won us this game. All right, so the Packers and the Panthers played, and the Packers won 24-16. And if you watch that game, it ended in such a predictable fashion. Such a predictable fashion. We get stopped on 4th and goal at the 1-yard line. We try to hand it off to McCaffrey, and he gets stopped. I can't blame that play call with what we have, but I can blame with the position that our organization has put us in with what we have. So, Kyle Allen, I'm still not buying in. I'm still not impressed. He showed a little bit more in the game. He went 28 of 43, 307 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 7.1 yards per attempt, but
He's
36.5 QBR. I mean, he made some throws late in the game to put us in position to go score. But man, you cannot tell me that, and we'll get to the Packers side for all you Packers fans later into the segment. But you cannot tell me as an NFL fan, if you watch the NFL, you cannot tell me that if we had Cam Newton, that he couldn't make some of those same throws that Kyle Allen made, and that when we got to the 1 yard line on a 4th and goal, you can't tell me he wouldn't have won that game, or at least tied the game up by going in and scoring from the 1 yard line by just QB powering it. You can't tell me that. Are you going to try and tell me that Cam Newton couldn't have won that game?
he probably would have fumbled.
You are
Being honest.
so disrespectful. He would not have fumbled. All right. You were so disrespectful. No. And even though Kyle Allen may be a slightly better thrower of the football, which I'm still not completely bought into his arm, Kyle Allen missed some throws as well as made some throws, but he missed some throws that I know Cam Newton would make. There was a time where Greg Olsen was running a route. He hooked it, and Kyle Allen completely overthrew it. He just completely threw it right in front of him. And it was that miscommunication between him. And you can't tell me that Cam Newton wouldn't have hit that pass, because him and Greg Olsen have been playing for years together. I don't know why Greg Olsen turned against him and said that, oh, Kyle Allen's our quarterback, which you can't tell me that they aren't turning on Cam. We went into that in a previous video. I think that Cam has been sabotaged and he's done in Carolina, unfortunately. But you can't tell me that Cam Newton wouldn't have hit that throw over the middle to Greg Olsen when they have a complete and have had such a great chemistry over the years that they've played together. So you can't tell me that he wouldn't hit that pass. And it was a key missed throw. And so I'm still not bought into Kyle Allen. That was one of my first takeaways, was that if we have Cam Newton, we win that football game. Or at least take it to overtime. Because we still would have had to hit the 2-point conversion. And we still would have only had it tied, and it would have went into overtime. So who knows what would have happened in overtime. But I believe that Cam Newton could have won that game for us. All right, if he was fully healthy with his shoulder, he would have won that game for us, because I've seen him throw in that offense when he was healthy, and we were winning football games, and he was doing better than Kyle Allen was. So you can't tell me that we wouldn't have tied that game up with Cam. And then we look at the Packers side of it. Man, I think Aaron Jones is the star of this Packers football team. I think they have to run it to win the championship. If they want to get to their championship aspirations, I think they have to run it with Aaron Jones. When you look at how Aaron Rodgers played, 7 of 29 for 233 yards, 8 yards per attempt, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a 40.3 QBR. That's not bad, but that's not great. But when you look at Aaron Jones, only 13 carries for 93 yards, 3 touchdowns. We as a Panthers defense, I watched the game and we had no answer for Aaron Jones. So I believe Aaron Jones is a bona fide star, and he is the leader of this football team. What are your thoughts on that?
All right. So my main takeaway from the Panthers side of this thing is if y'all make the playoffs as a wild card, and that's a if.
Yeah, that's a
Y'all
big if, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Y'all would get bounced.
Probably. I would love to argue with you about it and say, oh, how the Panthers are going to come through. But I don't have any confidence in our team. Our defense isn't the same. We aren't able to stop the run. Luke Kuechly does not look like the same linebacker. He looks like he's starting to come of age. And Kyle Allen, bottom line, can't get it done. He is a bona fide game manager. He's going to dink and dunk to Christian McCaffrey. And as long as Christian McCaffrey does well, our team will do pretty well. But if he doesn't, then we're screwed. Plain and simple.
True. At this point, if y'all not going to use Will Greer, y'all could give him
to us for like a fifth rounder. He could be Drew. You
No,
know what I'm saying? All right.
no,
Besides that,
no.
besides that, okay, you said Aaron Jones might be the star, blah blah blah, all that good stuff. But you can't forget, everyone is planning for Aaron Rodgers and his core wide receivers. They're not game planning for Aaron Jones. Although Aaron Jones has been playing good, I'm not going to about that. But we can't forget that Aaron Rodgers makes timely, great throws when he needs to be great. Like that throw to Devontae Adams, the corner was smothered on him. Aaron Rodgers placed the ball right behind his back, put it right there, and I think they're first and goal on like the 6, and Aaron Jones scores. Like we can't like forget, like although the stats may not back it up, like he may not have his touchdowns or his yards or anything like that. Aaron Rodgers makes some timely throws, some throws that only him and I think just him, only throws that he can make. And like, although the stats won't back that up, if you watch the game, he made some great throws. I watched that
He
game
did.
all the way through. Make some timely, great throws.
He did. I'm not gonna lie about that. I'm not trying to say Aaron Rodgers is horrible. Not by no means am I saying that Aaron Rodgers is horrible. All right, I was saying we were literally talking about him being in the MVP conversation just a few weeks ago. All right, so nobody is trying to hate over here on Aaron Rodgers. All right, he's still great, but we look at it and we look at it how we look at Tom Brady. All right, that's how I look at it. He's starting to come of age. No, not at the point that Tom Brady is right now, but in the past, how we looked at older Tom Brady. All right, Tom Brady was not producing as far as stats goes like he used to be, and he would still at times make those timely great throws like last year in the Super Bowl, right? But he was not
Yeah,
the leader of the team. Remember, we were arguing, I think both of us were arguing, but especially me, I was arguing he was not the leader of that football team. The defense and Sony Michel in the running game was the leader of that team. All right, that's why they won. And that played itself out in the Super Bowl as the defense held the Rams to 3 points and Sony Michel got it done on the ground, right? So we have to look at it the same way with the Packers, how we looked at it with the Patriots. I think that Aaron Jones is the leader of this team because he is the one who's consistently coming in, game out, and producing, whether it's on the ground or through the air. All right, whether he's catching the ball out of the backfield or running the ball. With Aaron Rodgers, it's a week-to-week basis. Sometimes he plays great, sometimes he plays average, and sometimes he plays bad. All right. But with Aaron Jones, it's almost a consistent thing. When they give him enough carries, he gets it done. I mean, can you dispute that? I mean, that's how I look
no,
at it.
you can't. Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. I have no counter argument.
I mean, I still believe Aaron Rodgers can get it done. But again, it's just like Tom Brady was last year and in the previous years where he's not always going to be there for you. All right, when you get to that level of age, you're going to have your ups and downs. You're going to have your your up games where you still look like the star that you were in the past, and then in other games you're going to look down. You're going to look like, oh, does he still have it? And so Aaron Jones, I was about to say Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Jones is a consistent, and that's when you look at the leader of a football team, you need him to be consistent. And that's why I think Aaron Jones is, and that's why I think he is a bona fide star. And if it weren't for his lack of carries, I think he could be potentially in the MVP conversation instead of Christian McCaffrey. But he's not getting Christian McCaffrey touches, right? He's only getting 13 carries, whereas Christian McCaffrey in this game had 20 carries. You know? So that's what
Yeah,
I think. It's kind of a similar situation to compare it to college. I don't want to be a biased Clemson fan, but it's kind of like how we do with Travis Etienne. I mean,
hmm
we give him a limited amount of carries, but when he, when he does carry the ball, he's bringing the wood. He is completely producing for our team. And while I don't necessarily think he's the leader of our team, because I think Trevor Lawrence has emerged again as the leader of the football team to talk about Clemson, I don't think it's a completely one-to-one comparison, but it just reminds me of that, because Aaron Jones, it looks like they don't give him enough carries. They don't. I think that they should be giving him about 20 carries a game, and then we could really see what this man could do. And I think he can produce. I think he could give you a ton of yards if you give him the carries. But if you like this video, hit the like button, and also if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, and also click the notification bell so you never miss an upload or a stream. All right, to finish off this podcast, we do customarily talk about college football. Sorry, I had to take a sip of, I have to. I'm gonna try to be as unbiased as possible as a Clemson fan, but I have to say to the two teams out there, Alabama, what it do? Penn State, what it do? Because they wanted to say those two teams were ahead of us, and boy, did I love that they did that. We'll get into it as we get down to the rankings, but I'm going to recap everything that happened in college football in the top 6 this weekend. All right, so we look at number 1. They put Ohio State last week at number 1, and they came out and they supported that. They won 73-14 over Maryland. Maryland is not that great of an opponent. I get that. I've heard tons of Clemson fans for some reason hating on Ohio State when they shouldn't be. When you play down opponents and you play opponents that aren't on your level, the only thing that you could do to prove that you are a great team is you blow them out. And boy, did they blow them out. I mean, 73-14 is crazy numbers. Justin Fields still in the Heisman race as he's continuing to put up numbers through the air, on the ground. J.K. Dobbins still producing on the ground. In this game, a significant storyline was that Chase Young was out. He's probably going to be suspended anywhere from 2 to 4 games for taking some money to bring his girlfriend out, which I completely disagree with the NCAA. But, I mean, we all know that the NCAA is a dictatorship and that it completely needs to be amended. But we want to get into that. So, Ohio State, no Chase Young, no problem. We kind of thought that going into the game because they are playing Maryland, but they definitely solidified their position as a top 2 team. LSU at number 2 faced the number 3 team in the country and beat Alabama 46-41. Joe Burrow might have just locked up the Heisman. I mean, I mean, he might have just done that. Unless he collapses in the last 3 games, which he plays teams like, I believe he plays Texas A&M at the end of the season like they usually do. They play Arkansas, which Arkansas is a dumpster fire. They just fired their head coach. And they play one other team. It escapes me right now. I don't have the schedule in front of me. I'm sorry for that. Excuse me. But, yeah, LSU completely came out and showed why they're one of the top 2 teams in the nation. I got them at number 1, and we'll go into that later. I think that they showed me a lot with the win over Alabama. It was more dominant than people think. Alabama was playing catch-up the entire game. And so I definitely think that Joe Burrow, as long as he doesn't collapse, he's the Heisman winner. Because he just comes in, game out, producing, putting up big numbers. I mean, he threw for over another 300 yards, almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns against Bama, and just looked like an absolute superstar, which I gotta admit, I never saw that coming. I thought that Joe Burrow was going to be the reason that LSU got held back this season, and it's completely shifted. I mean, he's the reason that they're winning now. And so I will happily admit that I was wrong about LSU. I thought they'd be good, not great this year coming into the season, but they have completely proved me wrong, and they continue to win football games. And then looking at it from the Alabama perspective, you still have a chance, Alabama fans, to make the playoffs. And I think there's an opportunity for that to happen. But the question is, should it happen? As football fans, should we be happy with letting Alabama in if it plays out that way? I don't think
No,
no. Exactly. No, we shouldn't be
but it's
because
going to happen.
it I don't know.
Sadly,
We'll go over some scenarios of where that could happen, but I think that I think they should be punished for the way that they play defense because they don't play any defense anymore. We've seen it against every single elite offense that they face now on that they can't play defense. They have busted coverages. They can't defend the run like they used to. So teams still stop the run decently. They slow it down, but they still allow. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week ran for 103 yards. I mean, so they're not great at stopping the run, but they can at least do that a little bit. But their pass defense, they just get torched by every single good opponent that they face. You look back at last year, Georgia in the SEC championship, they went and scored over 30 on that Alabama defense. Or maybe they didn't score 30, but they scored 28, so close to it. And Jake Fromm had a field day on that defense. They were still able to prevail, but it showed that their defense was starting to crumble. And then in the semifinal, they went up 28-0, yes, but they eventually gave up 38 points. I think it was 38, and if it wasn't, it was close to that. And so that's completely unacceptable. And then we know what happened in the championship game. They give up 44 points, and then this week, giving up 46. That's abysmal. They are no longer able to play defense, and I think they should be punished for that, and they should not make the playoffs. And I think that every single college football fan should agree with that. Even Alabama fans, I think they should agree with that. They're not playing up to the Alabama standard. I mean, this will be a travesty if they make it in, because, I mean, it just shows maybe they are one of the better football teams, and maybe they are one of the top 4 teams. And when it comes, I mean, they're super talented on offense, but you can't. It was the same thing with Oklahoma, and why I didn't think that they should have made it into the college football playoff last year. You have to be able to play a semblance of defense. You have to be able to be balanced on both sides of the football. And I think you should be punished when you don't do one of those things great. And they don't play great defense. I mean, it's not on the level of Oklahoma last year. I mean, they're not 126 bad. They're not one of the worst defenses in the country, but they're still a below average defensive football team. And I just think you should have to play complimentary football if you want to get into the playoffs. That's just my view on it. And so to move on to number 4, Penn State. I'm sorry. 31-26 loss to Minnesota. I put it in caps, and I said it right as the game ended. As a Clemson fan, I'm going to be extremely biased about it. I told you, y'all are frauds. Y'all are completely fraudulent. Huh?
Said they might lose next week too.
They play Ohio State next week on the 23rd. Yeah, that's right. And so I think, like I said, you're going to have to prove it to me if you want to prove that you're one of the top teams. And I think the committee was wrong for putting them in the top 4. But again, I'm thankful because it showed that y'all weren't ready for prime time. Y'all are a decent football team, but y'all are a year behind where you will be. I think next year that y'all can compete for a championship. But when it comes to this season, I just knew in the back of my head they're a good football team, but when it comes to late November, they're going to crumble because they're just not ready for primetime. They are a young football team. They will eventually grow into a team that can play in the big-time games. But, I mean, y'all lost to a Minnesota team that was struggling at the beginning of the year against some of the FCS opponents, and y'all lost. I know they're undefeated, and I respect Minnesota for beating y'all, but you can't lose that game if you're a Penn State fan. I feel kind of sorry for you, but at the same time, as a Clemson fan, I was kind of mad that y'all were ahead of us, And so you lost, and it proves that y'all were fraudulent. Clemson at number 5 last week. They beat 55-10 NC State. They went over NC State 55-10. And I'm glad that they put us at number 5. And I wish they would do it again this week. I know they won't, but I wish they would again because they had our team playing like some killers, man. They came out and ran it up 28-0 at the end of the first quarter against NC State. I mean, completely annihilated them. I just see that happening the rest of the season. They disrespected this football team. And Dabo, he's going to keep on playing that. He's going to keep on playing that card with this team. And the team will continue to improve off of that as they build that chip on their shoulder of being underrated by the committee in the first rankings. Even though they won't be underrated, I think, for the rest of the season by the rankings, and they'll be in the top 4 for the rest of the year, I still think that they're going to hold on to the fact that, hey, in the first rankings, y'all wanted to put us at 5. We'll remember that. And then looking at number 6 to round it out, Georgia gets a 27-0 win over Missouri. The Georgia defense is one of the best in the country, but I'm still not sold on this offense and the way that y'all receivers are playing. Lawrence Cager goes out with another injury, and y'all beat a Missouri team without Kelly Bryant 27-0. And so I don't think that's too impressive since Kelly Bryant was out. But as long as you continue to play defense and run the football, y'all might have a chance. Y'all might have a chance to go out and beat LSU in the SEC championship, because I do believe y'all have the SEC East locked up. As I don't think y'all will lose another game. But you do have a key game against Auburn, which could be a little bit tricky since it's on the road. But we'll see. And so the CFP top 6 is coming out tonight. And so I will give you my CFP top 6. I got LSU at number 1, moving up from number 2 last week. I thought they were number 1 last week, but the committee put them at 2. I believe that the committee will put them at number 1 this week, because I do believe when you have 4 top 10 wins, you look at the resume, that's crazy good. Crazy good resume. I don't think that the committee will be able to ignore it. And so I think they will move Ohio State down to number 2, even though Ohio State did nothing to get moved down. Y'all didn't lose, so it's not like, we got to move them down. No. It's just that LSU played one of the top teams in the nation and beat them and looked pretty dominant doing it. And so y'all are going to get moved down to number 2. I got Clemson at number 3. I do believe that Clemson will be at number 3 in the committee's top 6. I believe that Georgia will get moved up to 4, and that's how I think it should be. And so I think that they're going to move down Alabama to number 5. I do believe it'll be number 5, and that's who I have at number 5. I don't believe they should be in the playoffs at the end of the year, but for right now, when looking at the one-loss teams, I believe they're the second ranked one-loss team. I think they'll be behind Georgia because Georgia does have 2 top 10 wins, or 2 top-tier wins. They're really top 15 wins, as Auburn is outside the top 10. But I do think Georgia will be ahead of them, and then Alabama will be at number 5 on the outside looking in. And then I got Oregon at number 6. I don't think that they're going to put Oregon at number 6. I believe they might jump Minnesota up to number 6 because they're going to give huge respect to Minnesota beating Penn State, which they did not give any respect to them last week. Minnesota was 17th. But I think they're going to take a huge jump up and maybe be at number 6. But in my top 6, I have Oregon at number 6, looking at from the outside, looking in. And honestly, looking at the scenarios, and you can jump back in on this, Hasan. I think Alabama might make the playoffs. But I do think in order for that to happen, I believe that they're going to have to blow out Auburn at the end of the year. So what will happen is, I think for them to make the playoffs, I think Georgia would need to win out and then lose to LSU in the championship game. And so they drop out from the number 4 spot. And then I think that Alabama would have to blow out Auburn so that they could say that Oregon, who would have been let's say that Oregon wins out. It could be Utah, but let's say it's Oregon for all intents and purposes. Uh,
Uh,
I messed up on that one, didn't I? But yeah, Oregon. Let's say that they went out and go 12-1 and win the Pac-12 championship game over a top 10 Utah team. All right, for Alabama to say they are unequivocally better than Oregon and get in for that number 4 spot, I think they have to blow out Auburn because Auburn is the one loss that Oregon had. Oregon led that game the entire way, and that was at the beginning of the year. And so I think that they'll look at that as a decent loss for Oregon, especially since they didn't have all their starting receivers. I mean, Micah Pittman was out, Jawan Johnson was out, and so I definitely think that Alabama, if they blow out Auburn, they will make the playoffs because I think Georgia will end up losing to LSU and they'll end up nabbing that 4 spot. Now, if they lose to Auburn, obviously they're out. But if they win a close game against Auburn and it's like a nip and tuck game and it looks like Alabama should have lost, I think they're out because they just don't have the resume to get into the CFP. They won't have a resume that's comparable to Oregon, and so you can't say that they're unequivocally better. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I just blanked out. I was looking at the stats. I'm sorry. Um, I believe Alabama is gonna get in. I keep you know what I'm saying. I keep saying that. Uh, I do believe. For some reason the list looks. Let's see, you got LSU 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3. First 3 I agree with. You got Georgia 4. All right, Bama 5. You got Oregon at 6. I'm sitting here wondering where's Florida State at? Like, nah.
Okay,
Like,
you
I'm
need to
like
stop.
wondering.
Y'all,
All right,
y'all got to win against Boston. Y'all actually might make a bowl game because y'all beat Boston College this week. Y'all are 5-5, and you play. I think like I'm not disrespecting you. I think that's good that y'all are gonna make a bowl game, especially since you've already fired Willie Taggart, which was the first move you needed to make to start the rebuild. So I think that y'all have like Alabama State next, and so y'all will probably beat them, and y'all make a bowl game. Because you'll have 6 wins then.
You trying to be funny? It's
I'm not. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm honestly being so dead serious that is an impressive thing for FSU with how the season has gone. It could have been easy for y'all to lose to Boston College and give up on the season. So I'm being dead serious. Congratulations. Because I think that y'all are moving in the right direction by getting rid of Willie Taggart. That was the first step. As long as y'all had kept him, y'all would have been in the dumpster. Just saying.
Okay. But yeah, honestly, I feel like we shouldn't sleep on Auburn. You think do you think Auburn can like sneak in if they beat Georgia?
Not into the playoffs. No, not into not into the playoffs because they can't win the division. All right, they already lost to LSU, and so they wouldn't be able to sneak into the playoffs because they wouldn't be able to win a championship game. They almost did it with 2 losses in 2017, but that was because they won the SEC West, and they played into the SEC championship game, and then they lost in the SEC championship game. So if they were able to win their division, I might be saying yes, they could, but Auburn can't win their division, so I don't think it will happen, especially since they have 2 losses.
Okay, that's fair.
No, but I do think they could beat Georgia. I'm not saying that they couldn't beat these teams, but I just don't think they'll make the playoffs if they do that. But they could beat Georgia. They could and create chaos. I hope they beat Alabama because again I don't want to see, and call me biased, but I don't want to see Alabama in the playoffs. Just as a football fan, not even as a Clemson fan, I don't want to see them in the playoffs. I've seen them too many times in the playoffs. It's y'all's turn to take a seat and watch from the couch and watch.
Scared.
No,
y'all, because
I think
it's the Alabama invitation.
I don't think we're scared. Not our team, but as a fan, me personally, I'm kind of scared of facing Bama because I just don't know. Not just because you never know. Because Alabama got bounced out in 2017 for a little while and then got back in, and then they came back angry. So, but
No, but
I don't think that's the case though, because I think that Alabama team was better than this 2019 team. Maybe not on offense, but from a defensive standpoint, they were, because they came out and blitzed us when we had Kelly Bryant. I don't think they can do that this year because they just don't have the play at linebacker like they used to.
yeah, okay, but I just feel they're gonna make it because Georgia is gonna either lose to Auburn or LSU. And all right, so Bama needs LSU to basically win out, right?
Yeah.
And they need Georgia to lose, so obviously they can jump them.
Right.
And even if Oregon wins out, bro, I still don't believe that the committee is gonna put them in over Bama. I think they just have too much respect
but
for Bama. That's the sad thing.
That may be the case, but then they would be going against protocol, because if they win only a close game against Auburn, Alabama, then you look at it and the resumes wouldn't match up, because Oregon would have played a better schedule and had better wins against better opponents, and they would be a conference champion. And so I think that they would be going against protocol if they did that. Because then for them to say that, to look at those resumes, if it ends up being like that, they would have to say that they think that Alabama is unequivocally better than Oregon. That's I keep on saying those two words because that's how it is in their rule book. Their protocol is unequivocally better. And I just don't think that they could prove that they're unequivocally better. And I think they sent a statement by putting them at number 3 this past week, which was they know that Alabama is down on defense and that they're down on their schedule. And so I think that they will hold them out if that's how it plays out. Now, if they blow out Auburn, then
Auburn needs to win out, right?
For what?
For Bama to have a quality win over Auburn, because if they blow,
they would need Auburn to come into that game with only 2 losses. They would need them to come in as a 9-2 football team, and they would need to blow them out. Because then you could say, hey, we went on the road, we beat what was then a 2-loss team, and that's a quality win. Right. And so, but if Auburn loses to Georgia, especially if it's in dominant fashion, which I don't think it will be, I think it will be a close game. But even if they just lose, their best win would be against a 4-loss team. A 4-loss team, when the best win for Oregon would be in the Pac-12 championship game, and they would have beat a really good Utah team that was ranked in the top 10 with 1 loss. So, when you look at Oregon's 1 loss, you would look at it as they played in a game where they were winning the entire time, and then they just choked without some of their best receivers. So I think Alabama, that scenario has to play out for Alabama to make it in.
Yeah, so Oregon needs some. I mean, not Oregon. Frick. Oh yeah. Bama needs some help. I was like Auburn and
Bama
Oregon
definitely needs some help.
Yeah, okay. But look at Oregon's recent games. They was close to a Washington team, Washington State.
Washington is difficult to play on the road. Now, Washington State. That was a little bit of a nip and tuck game where it was, But, I mean, they blew out USC on the road. And USC is not an amazing football team, but they play different at home. You look at USC, they beat Utah at home. They before that game, they had lost all the losses that USC had were on the road, and USC had been playing great at home. And Oregon came into there down, actually, I think about 10-0 or 14-0, and then for the rest of the game they completely dominated. They completely shut the game down, and so I think that Washington State game kind of gets eliminated by the USC win.
But looking at
Oregon's wins. They beat Cal by 10 points.
Cal at the time was a difficult team to play. All right,
Stanford by
Cal has.
15.
I mean that's a little bit iffy, but that was towards the beginning of the season. But Cal was difficult at the time. Now Cal has suffered some injuries since then, and so they're not looking too good record wise. But that's not a bad performance.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, yeah.
but we're gonna finish it off with that. And so, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and also click the notification bell so you never miss an upload or a stream. And so we're gonna peace out. We've fully developed the topics we wanted to talk about, and so I hope y'all have a good day. I'm John West, aka Dead Up, signing out. Hasan, go ahead and sign out.
Well, yeah. Peace.